Matt, are you ready? Okay. All right. We'll call this meeting to order. This is the May 10th Town Council meeting, and we'll get started. First thing is a moment of silence. Just checking, does anyone have anyone they want to lift up tonight? We'll lift up Sandy Wilkes, Helen and Sandy Wilkes. Sandy's mother passed away last week, so we'll keep them, the Wilkes family, in our thoughts and prayers. Jack?
Julie O'Malley is going to have back surgery tomorrow.
Oh, okay, I heard she was having surgery, but didn't hear for what.
I saw TJ on the weekend.
Okay, good, thank you. Anybody else? Good. Okay, well, if we can just bow our heads for a moment of silence.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The next up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Council, you received the minutes. I have two corrections, Susan and Matt. One is on page 2, Nicole, you just say Frederick Avenue. Could we add bridge, Frederick Avenue Bridge? And then you have M&T Bank, and it should be the Jubilee Building.
Okay.
She did not do M&T Bank. And then on page 4, one of the BPPAs is actually BBPA. So we've got a P missing and an extra B. And that's all I got. Think anybody else have anything on the minutes?
I had just sent some, just a minor correction to you, Susan, about Nicole's last name. Quick correction on the spelling of it.
Oh, you're right. That was spelled wrong. Thank you. Okay. So if that's all the changes, if we can get a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the April Town Council meeting.
Okay, with the amended or the
with the
correction.
amendments just discussed.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so okay, I see. We're gonna move things around just a little bit. Or let me, Jason, can you come on line, Jason Gerson?
Yep, here I am.
Are you ready, or do you want to wait a few more minutes to see more people join?
You can wait a few minutes, that's fine.
Okay. All right, so we'll start on the announcements. First, I do want to announce that the candidates for the 2 council seats for the June 7th town election remains the same 3 candidates that we announced in May. That would be Connor Crimmins, Darren Bartram, and Tim Willard. So those are your 3 candidates for the May 7th election. We will be having a candidates forum held on Zoom for Monday, May 24th at 7 o'clock. And Rob Sachs and Sean McMullen have agreed to moderate that forum. We'll send out more information to the candidates a little later. Number C, the town election will be held. We are offering absentee ballots, which there is on the website. On the town election, you can actually download a ballot request, or you can email Susan, or you can call Susan and just request an absentee ballot, but you must fill out the form. So go ahead and download that because you'll have to return the form to get an absentee ballot. And then we will be, Matt, when do you expect to have the ballots ready for the absentee?
Probably next Monday.
Okay. Okay. And then they can be mailed to a P.O. box. They can be returned by P.O. box. They can be dropped in the ballot box that's outside of the town hall main entrance. And then they can also be returned in person if you wanted to, but best to just drop it in the ballot box. And I will remind everyone that that election is June 7th. So if you are doing an absentee ballot, you must have the ballot returned by June 7th. Don't mail it June 7th, return it by June 7th before 9 p.m., particularly in the ballot box. Council, do you have any questions regarding that?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
No, so I think that there were some residents, or at least one resident, raised some questions about regarding the transparency of the decision to hold the election as a regular in-person election. And I think that we've been quite open and communicative about the deliberations around the election changes to the code and the charter. I actually have to admit, I was a little surprised that it had been decided that we were going to have a regular in-person election. I thought that we would discuss it first at the council meeting here today. My preference has long been that since last election that we should be, err on the side of that being the norm. I think I've expressed that, like, we should be doing mail-in elections with a potential exception with people wanting to show up in person if they choose to allow them to do that. I get the community charm and the local, meet with our neighbors feel of it. But I do think that in this day and age, we should be trying to give people proactively more access to vote. I mean, it's one thing to say you can mail in and request a mail-in an absentee ballot. It's another thing to actually mail them those ballots or mail them an absentee ballot request form automatically. I guess I just think that the way that we did it last year is a good way of doing it as the norm. And I know it could cost a little bit more money to do so, but let's have a little bit more of a discussion on potentially just mailing people absentee ballots, proactively reaching some of the people who may be a little less accessible during those hours of 6 to 9 p.m. Right? I think it could benefit those who are, for example, working parents who don't have babysitters, or people who have to work a night shift, right? And of course they can request an absentee ballot, but I think that's kind of, to me, an older fashioned way of doing things. And this is what I thought our election reform had done. It kind of gave the option of us more flexibility to do things proactively. And the other thing is, I think there are probably neighbors of ours who are not comfortable still voting in person. So given COVID, but anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. Is there something we can do to be a little more proactive on this issue rather than kind of falling back to just the traditional way of doing things? And I was hoping we would have that discussion today. And I know that you probably weren't expecting me to raise these points, but I was taken aback a little bit about the decision that was made.
Well, the decision follows what we set up and approved. I think, the fact that schools are reopening, the fact that, everybody is not maybe back to work, but they're certainly out there driving around. If you can go to the Safeway, you can certainly come into the drill hall with maybe 10 other people and fill out a ballot.
I
But
only have 40% of our population, I think, max, that's been vaccinated. Not everyone is going to the Safeway.
Well, I understand that's why you have the option of an absentee ballot. I don't have a problem with getting an application.
It does make it a little bit harder, right? And if the goal is to make it more accessible, it would be better, I think, if we made it easier.
one of the
Easier
things that,
how? Mailing them a ballot?
Yep. Not creating an extra step.
one of the things that I think was instructive from the last election was that we mailed everybody ballots, but the overwhelming majority of them were dropped off at the drop box.
Mhm.
And, I know we talk about absentee as though it's, burdensome, but Susan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when you and I talked about prior voting practices, people voting absentee show up at town hall basically as soon as the ballots are ready, anytime between then and election day. And they often fill out the ballot right there and hand it back to you. So they don't need to show up in those 3 hours. They don't even need to show up when you're open to return it, because they can put in the drop box that is going to be on town hall. And so I guess, I mean, I hear the concerns, but I don't think it's a question of you have to show up during those 3 hour window. I don't think we are encouraging people to show up. Certainly if they're not comfortable, if they want, they can just put it in the Dropbox. And you know, the request, it's as fast as going to the town office and asking Susan for one and filling out the form there. Or, you know, any way you get that form in, you can scan it, you can photocopy it with your phone and send it in. I mean, we make it really easy. And I think on the flip side, the mail-in election that we conducted last time placed a huge burden on the election judges. They were no longer just checking people in and then counting ballots. They were going through the opening of multiple envelopes, cross-checking the control numbers. And so I think as we are coming out of this, I think we're offering people a lot of choices here. Vote in person with the town office, vote absentee, mail it, or vote in person on election night.
Well, I want to remind everybody that this is the way you voted in November. You requested a ballot. The ballot was mailed to you. You dropped it off at a ballot box, or you could mail it back, or you could go to a gymnasium in a school and you could do it in person. And that was November, where there were no vaccinations. So how is this different? Tim, I'll get to you. The council is talking first, and then we'll get back to you.
I mean, it is different. There was a massive voter, get out the vote, kind of go request your absentee ballot push. And I don't think we've done that as a town. We've had the minutes, we've discussed the changes we've done to the election ordinances, but people are not aware that it's much easier now to get an absentee ballot. You don't need certain justification. We've rewritten the code to just be able to get that, you know, without any explanation. And I think rather than just saying, okay, we did it and now people can request it if they want it, I think we should be encouraging them to request it by mailing them the absentee ballot request form.
Well, I have no problem with doing that. We can include it in the journal that's going out, or instead of the postcard, we can mail them a copy of the absentee ballot request form if that would help.
I think it would help.
I have to tell you, Nate, I am very disappointed that people would send in emails accusing us of never even talking about it. And I think that is completely unfair.
I agree that that's unfair, the criticism that we didn't talk about it, the issues. But we really did not take a vote or discuss this particular election, what was going to be decided for, whether to hold in person, whether COVID was still a risk or a concern for some people. You know, we rewrote the election ordinances to be more like a traditional one with some additional flexibility. But that flexibility was also to give us the option of doing another mail-in election if we wanted. And I do think that we have some transparency issues about whether we had that discussion to decide to do it one way or the other. And the other issue that, I mean, to add to this is that I don't think we had a resolution on the ballot questions that we were discussing in previous council meetings. Are they going to be kind of information seeking questions on this ballot about the eligibility for voting?
I'm pretty sure we had that discussion that we were going to wait to bring that to the after this election, and we would send out the a questionnaire on an envelope to get whether they wanted it to be on a ballot, but there wasn't enough time to get that done.
Maybe we did
have that discussion.
Remembering, I thought that was in the context if it was going to be an uncontested election. But I always thought that if it was contested, we were going to put that on the ballot. Darren, you and I talked about this issue many times in the past. I don't know if you recall it the same way I do.
Yeah, I recall at the end of the discussion, and I'm not recalling the exact resolution, that what we were going to be doing was looking into a survey that introduced some level of security to keep people from voting multiple times and to provide and to assure anonymity to them. But I'm agnostic as to whether we put it on this ballot or whether we go back and figure out a survey that can capture more participation, because it's sort of a little bit of a catch-22. We can have the input be limited to people who vote in this election, and off mayor elections are just routinely low turnout, much lower turnout than contested mayor elections. Or we can do a survey where we at least have the option of sort of, repeatedly reminding people to get their survey back. And so I don't have a strong preference. The only preference I really want is I would like, at the end of the day, to feel like people that we've heard from them.
Yeah, I mean, it's May 10th. The election is less than a month away. I think considerable work went into, since the last, election, which was unique in itself because we were planning on having an election, the world just kind of stopped. And we made some changes to adapt to that. We had a lot of discussions. Since we are less than a month away, if the idea, I think we've made it easier to vote. Personally, I've heard from a lot of residents that they'd like to get back to going to town hall, and that's great. We have a plan that affords that. But there are other residents who like the convenience of mailing in a ballot or just dropping it off on a morning walk. And we've created a mechanism that allows for that. I think we've made it easier to vote. I think, to Nate, your point, could we make it easier for people to know how to request an absentee ballot? And I think we have time to do that, to Mayor Tracy's point. We could, certainly put it in the journal article that's coming out all about the election, or a postcard. I think there's ample time to do both of those things to help make sure people know, if you want an absentee ballot, here's how you get it, right? Go to this link, or call this number, or just stop by town hall, get that information out there broadly, widely, make it easy to do. And then really it's up to the voter. They will have, if, Matt said he believes that ballots should be able to be available by next week, that's the 17th, they will have, 2.5 weeks to fill out a ballot and return it at really their convenience, 24 hours a day, because of the drop box on the building. I feel like that's pretty accessible for an election.
Okay, let me open it up to anyone in the audience who has a question. Tim, you were raising your hand.
It's a little confusing to me, since we had an election last year, whether or not there was going to be in-person voting this year. And I appreciate that you probably discussed this and decided it, but I don't think it has been clearly communicated as widely as possible that, yes, you can either come in and vote or you can request an absentee ballot.
Okay. Anyone else? Not seeing hands.
If I could, real quick, just for people's benefit. There's a lot of places we go nowadays for information, right? Social media. There's a neighborhood listserv that is not run by the town, right? It's a neighborhood thing. Information does get onto the listserv. I often post a lot of information to the listserv. I've been told I'm maybe too aggressive in my posting of information to the listserv. But the simple answer is, and I only say this because we worked really hard to update the town's website. the town's website is the official place to get all this information, and it is there. There's a whole link right under town government about the 2021 election, and it has this information there. So if people are wondering where to go to get the information, the first source, the primary source, is always the town's website. And we have a page dedicated to the 2021 election. It goes through, if you're not sure, if you're new to the town, you're not sure if you're registered to vote with town elections, there's ways that you can find out. There's deadlines that tell you when you have to be registered by. Susan's name as our clerk is there in numerous places, as is her email address, as is her telephone number to get all this information. The absentee ballot application is there. Qualifications for voters are listed there. The nominations, which closed at 4 p.m. today, were there, as well as previous election results. If you want to take a look at so the information is all there. And if there's ever a question of hey, I don't know where we go to get information from the town, please start with the town's website, because it's updated. I mean, Matt updates this and Carrie Ann updates this multiple times a week with new information.
Well, tell you what, Nate, why don't we get a letter out to all residents with, it's going to be in the journal as well, but information on voting and a copy of the request for an absentee.
That's good. I think that makes sense, and I think that will be a good step. And then, are we agreeing that we're not going to put the eligibility questions on this ballot? I just think it's a missed opportunity to get feedback, since it's for information anyway. I mean, how much more is it going to be to print it on the ballot?
But as we discussed, to do it as a non-binding.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Just making sure.
We would need the questions because it's got to go to print probably, I would say, by Wednesday, if not sooner. When are you planning on sending that out, Matt, to the printer?
Yeah, we probably need it first thing Wednesday morning. In the latest, we'll probably have the absentee or all ballots are probably Monday. I mean, we might have them as early as Friday. I just don't want to promise that, but Monday's more realistic for us.
But the ballot should have those two non-binding questions on them.
Okay, we'll need the language.
Maybe Darren and I can work on it. I think we've discussed what the language would be already, but we can run it by.
And just so for the people that don't understand what this is for, this is whether residents are interested in allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in town elections. That's a question. And then the other item was for residents who are not US citizens, but live in the town, and they are legal citizens, just so we are clear about that. Did I get that correctly? Everybody good with that?
And those would be two separate questions.
Correct. And they're non-binding. This is just for our information. Is this something that the town residents would like us to pursue?
And I should probably just clarify for people, the reason it's non-binding is because there is no mechanism under state law for us to make it a binding referendum. So
right, we would have to change the charter, go through the process of changing the charter. Charter.
So this is just, I certainly am interested in listening to the views of people throughout town as to both issues. And so, whether we do it through a survey or whether we put the questions on this, I don't want to do both, I don't think, because I think we have a potential that we would get crossing responses, but I'm certainly interested in knowing where people come down on the two issues.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. So I think we've covered everything on this particular issue, and we will move on to number 2, which is Warner Circle Park. And Jason Gerson is going to speak on behalf of Friends of Warner Circle.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor Tracy. So I was asked to provide a brief update, which I'll do. So Friends of Warner Circle was informed by the Parks Department that Parks and Washington Landmark Construction, or WLC, have reached an agreement concerning the Warner Mansion and Carriage House. The deal allows for the rehabilitation of the buildings into condominiums in accordance with historic preservation and other building codes, and preserves the entirety of the parkland for public use per the requirements of the county's Legacy Open Space Program. County Executive Elrich has not yet signed off on the agreement. Friends of Warner Circle sent him a letter last week to voice our support for the proposal and strongly encourage him to sign off on the agreement between Parks and WLC. The letter was included in the materials for tonight's meeting, so you're all free to read it. Friends of Warner Circle supports the Washington Landmark construction proposal. It is the first viable proposal for the Warner Mansion and Carriage House since the county purchased it through Legacy Open Space in 2005. For those of you who make use of Warner Circle Park, it's clear that the buildings are falling further into a state of dilapidation and disrepair. The estimated rehabilitation costs of approximately $5 to $6 million has meant that finding a buyer or tenant for the buildings has been incredibly challenging. And the agreement between Parks and Washington Landmark Construction ensures that the buildings would be preserved and rehabilitated, and that the parkland would continue to be fully preserved for public use, which includes the future noise reading garden and community events like opera in the circle. We've also believed that through its work at National Park Seminary, both the gymnasium and power plant projects, that Washington Landmark Construction has demonstrated its commitment to and experience with historic preservation projects. And so this is not the first town meeting or a public forum at which Friends has voiced its support for this proposal. It's been a long time in the making, and we're hoping that County Executive Elrich will understand the need to take some action. And so the Friends have tried to voice our support in a way that's reasonable. We've asked for a meeting with the county executive in June. So that our letter was sent just last week. We have not yet heard back, and that's understandable, of course. But yeah, I think it's helpful that, and I'm appreciative of Mayor Tracy for inviting us to this meeting to share it with the town. We'll also have some space allocated in the town newsletter and post some more information to the town listserv so that people can both ask questions. We have not, as just a group of citizens or residents, we recognize we are just trying to influence. We have no real, say in the proceedings, and we haven't, candidly, we haven't seen the agreement between the Parks and Washington Landmark Construction at this point. So but from the contours, the same parameters have been in place since the start of these conversations that I've alluded to, both with, the plan for condominiums, the preservation of the parkland for public use in perpetuity, and that the project will be through and through a historic preservation effort that will preserve the aesthetic of the buildings and recognize that, that reasonable people can disagree about those buildings becoming condominiums. But I think if one spends time in Warner Circle Park and sees the state of the buildings and recognizes the extreme costs of what it would take to not just repair them, but to rehabilitate them in ways that are concordant with historic preservation, I think this is a very good option, and it's been the only real option on the table for over a decade and a half. So I think I'll stop there. Mayor Tracy, I don't know if you want to add anything, or we can take questions.
Well, we did our first resolution. Well, there was a resolution in 2005 from when Len Rofast was mayor, supporting the purchase through Legacy Open Space for the mansion. And then we did another resolution in January of 2019, I think, supporting the sale of Warner Mansion to Washington Landmark, or supporting the fact that they were negotiating with them. So this is just, And previously, I think it was several years where the county was taking applications or trying to find somebody who would just take the building for like $1 a year. As they restored the property, and then they would have a lease period. And they did not get any applications that were viable. So it's costing, I think, was it about $70,000 a year for the parks just to keep the mansion and the carriage house in what they call a stable. There's no one behind Washington Landmark construction to take this on. So if the contract falls through, then we'll be sitting here possibly for another 10 years in waiting. So I think that is what we don't want. So council, do you all have any questions for Jason? Or we have several people on the call who are on the board of the Friends of Warner Circle.
I don't have any questions. I mean, everything I've seen about this proposal is something that we should support wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I don't have any questions either. I just say to the Friends of Warner Circle, like, wonderful job. I sat in with some of the early planning meetings for what to do, how to reactivate it, how to get the county and others interested in it, and to watch that group put that plan to action. That included touring the property during the Pumpkin Rock and Roll, getting the opera in the park back out there, making sure that people saw the mansion, saw what its possibilities were, reaching out, parks, getting it activated around parks with the pump track is what led to this as an option. I think this is a very exciting option to bring it back to its residential use in the heart of Old Town Kensington, the heart of our historic district, and to preserve the mansion before it's lost. Because I'm working with historic preservation on some other issues on the north side, and part of the challenges we're having is that many of the historical artifacts, the homes, the buildings, were lost from when they were built in the late 1800s to before historic preservation protection started going in place in 1978, 1980. And this is another, this is our crown jewel of Kensington that I'm really nervous if there isn't something that happens quickly, it will be lost to dereliction.
Anyone else? Bridget or Nate, any comments? Or
Sorry, you said Bridget first.
that's it. She's a little slow at the unmuting thing.
I don't need your judgment, Tracy. No, I have not. I kind of vetted this for myself last year, so I'm good.
You're good. Okay.
Yeah, I also just express my gratitude. I think it's a great step and has my support. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we have a resolution later in the evening, but it sounds like from what the council is saying that it will be probably unanimously approved. So does anyone else in the audience want to make a comment on Friends of Warner Circle before we move on?
Yeah, hi, this is Andrew Roud. One question I have, we're all talking about support of the proposal, but no one, I don't think any, unless I misread or heard, no one's seen the proposal that's in front of the county executive, correct?
That is correct, that we've not reviewed, it's not been made public. We do understand that the cost of the money that will change hands is $660,000, which I know in this market sounds ridiculously small. It really does not include much land except for what the building is sitting on. And I believe it's about 6 feet envelope around each building. And then, of course, because of the cost of the rehabilitation and that 5 million was just to bring it to code. So you could, have a single family home or an office in there.
How many units are in their proposal?
I believe it's 12. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, that's 12.
And just to be precise, the 12 units, I mean, they tore down the nursing wing and they're still planning to reconstruct on the footprint of the nursing wing to accommodate the 12
they
units.
are not. They're not. There is a section. They've approved a section off the kitchen. And not the nursing wing, I think, was on the other side.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
Yeah, so this would be actually an addition that when HPC was hoping to move into that property. And also, Andrew, it does include so many times per year community use of the area right behind the house. I think it's 3 or 4 times a year. And then they also would allow access to the to certain parts of the house, the community areas of the house.
So the 12 units are the overall sort of scheme for the entire project, inclusive of the house and any new things attached to it and the carriage house?
Yeah, I think the plan was for 10 in the mansion and 2 in the carriage house last I saw the proposal.
Which
And
is
did they-
still, it is on the website, on the town website under redevelopment. The
Did they
plan.
talk about a perceived purchase price of what they're talking about, what they're going to sell them for?
I think when Carl was there, it was like in the 800 or 900. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there was going to be a range based on square footage, and I think the lower end was 7 to 8, maybe 8 to 9, and then the higher end would be just north of $1 million. That's my recollection.
So at the end of the day, though, just to be clear, the taxpayers have paid $6 million for the property they won't recover?
No. And although once the property is turned back over, then it will be subject to property tax and income tax of those who live there.
But the project open space money was tax money, right, originally, where they purchased it from the whoever had the nursing home.
My guess is yes.
So that taxpayer money, $6 million of taxpayer money purchased that property, essentially.
But look at it, you also have to look at the fact that what is the park worth? Because the park will remain in community use. It will still belong to the taxpayers. So the only thing that will no longer belong is the house and the carriage house.
Right.
So the remaining park will still remain public. So it's not completely that 6 million as a loss.
Is there, before you guys take any position on it, wouldn't it be good to see what the proposal is that the county exec's looking at?
I'm not sure that it's completely public, but I can look into that.
Right.
But I believe the acreage is 4.4 acres, and I don't think the house the footprint of the house is maybe a half an acre between the two and the envelope.
Right. But when you talk about the 5 million rehabbing the existing house, that has to happen anyway if the guy's rehabilitating it to sell as a unit.
Well,
Right.
That's correct, but that 5 million wasn't turning it into condos. That was just bringing it up to code for and bringing in heat, air conditioning. That's like you bought it, now you want to move into it for a single family home.
Yeah, the only reason I kind of know a little bit about it is I have a project in Bowie that's got a house that was built in 1860. It's all brick, probably the same size. And the studies we've done, we don't really want it. We're commercial developers. It's sort of an albatross around our necks. And the estimates we get are somewhere between $1 and $2 million. So I'm wondering that's a pretty high number to rehab that house.
Have you been in it?
I have, but the one we
Okay.
have in Bowie's in worse shape.
Okay.
But also, we're also obligated under a concept of, destruction by neglect. On the private sector, we have to put more money into it than the county does. And I have the HPC too, because we're in
Right.
Prince George's County Park and Planning. So it's sort of funny how there's 2 sets of rules for the upkeep of the house. But I'm just having trouble squaring myself that $6 million of taxpayer money will be going towards a private sector development.
Well, again, don't forget that 6 million, I don't know what it would cost to replace the land of 4 acres of land.
Yeah, but the land's undevelopable, so I don't
No,
think
well,
you
I
can
understand that,
subdivide it
but I'm
off.
just saying that, and that was what they were paying for though, was, the cost of the land, so.
Yeah.
You're not losing the park.
Yeah,
But if your company wants to buy it and fix it up,
no,
Yeah.
doesn't pencil in. But yeah, it's just the spending of taxpayer money. If it's your own money, you think about it a little different, but
well, that's kind of water over the bridge, I'm afraid. That was, that would have been a good argument for 16 years ago.
right.
Well, and 16 years ago, I just want to remind people who were here, there was a panic about this because the owners of the nursing home at the time sold it without any notice to a developer. There were thoughts that it would give rise to, I think the figure was 18 homes on the circle. Now, could they have gotten through HPC? I don't know. But open space came in, and they were not exactly, it was arm's length, I guess, but at the time, people felt like the developer had the state over the barrel. And, it was a choice of were we going to do eminent domain or were we going to do open space, which is a little bit less coercive. And when the county, or I don't know if it's state or county, when they bought this land, there was huge support for this. Now, looking back with perfect hindsight, and at the cost of rehabbing it, there's a reason that the county hasn't finished it and moved in with offices. They can't find a viable use. And this is the only use that has come forward. And so,
I don't have a problem with the use, Councilman. I just have a problem with the sort of the underwriting of the land going to, I'm a private sector developer myself. I'd love to get $6 million worth of property for free. That'd be awesome. I could do deals all day.
You keep saying that, but I don't think it's $6 million of property for free. I think it's, first of all, you're like Tracy keeps saying, you're not getting the land. The land remains a county park.
You can't develop the land. What good is the land if you can't monetize it?
It's valuable. It's valuable to county residents as an asset for them to use.
Okay, I guess, I don't know. I just have a difference of opinion a little bit, but it's just that original $6 million I have a problem with.
But it's not going to change. I mean, that land will never be sold for redevelopment. So
I know, but in this world they operate in, it's always thirds. They talk about a third for the cost of the land, a third for cost of construction, a third for cost for profit. So that's important to know what these houses will go off on the back end. So if you do easy math, if it's $1.5 million, there's $500,000 per lot times, what did you say, 12? $6 million. You've retired it if they pay $6 million for it. That's all I'm saying.
okay. Thank you, Andrew.
All right, thanks.
Does anybody else have a comment they want to make?
I have a comment.
Uh-huh.
I'm also interested in the fate of Warner Circle Park, and I'm wondering, how do you justify selling this to a developer when the property was purchased through the Open Space Legacy Program, which was intended for public use of the entire property, correct? Not just the parkland around it.
Well, we don't own it, but what the county has said is that for 16 years, they've been trying to find a purpose for the house. And they've been trying to they have received some grants from the state, but not enough. I mean, government is not going to spend the kind of money, and Andrew will probably agree with that. They shouldn't be putting another nickel into the house just for a government facility. So
Not for a government facility, but what about a facility for the public?
well,
To benefit
I
the
think
community.
that's the same. I'm not sure that house would fit anything in there, like, I don't know. They tried to make it for the Historic Preservation Commission, and no one had the stomach to put money into a government, any government type of facility.
Well, it seems to me, that given that it's really at the heart of the community, that it would be perfect for some kind of community center. And I'm just having a hard time squaring the idea that, as Andrew was saying, this was purchased with public funds for the purpose of public benefit, yet I mean, selling it as condominiums, private condominiums, is quite a stretch to my mind.
Mhm. Well, that really is a question for the county, for the Parks Department. And, but I think, and they did 2 presentations to the town on, and it is the only viable use, because if you're not preserving the house, if you're going to let it sit for another 10, 15 years before you can, try to find the money to rehabilitate it, you're not a good steward of that property. So it's kind of a trade-off. Do you want to save the property?
Yes, I am interested in saving the property, but I have seen, I walk through that park almost every day, and I've seen a lot of people using there are women who use the patio for an exercise class. There are kids that roll around on skates around the parking areas. There are people who play, in the spaces all around and near the mansion. And I find it really hard to believe that is all going to stay the same if it gets turned into condominiums. I mean, those parking areas are going to get used for parking, right? Those won't be open to the public anymore.
Well, there'll still be some parking for the public because there's 2 areas for parking. So I don't know how much, because they won't own that land where the parking is right off Montgomery. So that'll still be part of the park. I'm sorry we don't have anyone from Parks on the call, because they could probably help you answer some more of these questions.
Yeah, it just seems like the public nature of the space is going to change a lot if there are going to be 12 condominiums owned privately as a result of this transaction.
One thing I want to, since I've been here since the beginning of this project, there have been various proposals over the years. I think it was going to be either a parks headquarters, and they were going to store their little inflatable river rescue boats in the garage. And that proposal generated upset in the community as well, because there were thoughts that these trucks and trailers and cars for all the parks employees were going to be coming and going. So again, this has been pending for 15 or so years. I think the choice that we're facing right now is, well, we don't really make the decision, but the county will spend $70,000, have them spend $70,000 a year to keep a building from falling down in a way that is inaccessible to the public. Spend $5 to $6 million to bring it up to code, and they've told us that money is just not there. It will not be spent. So it's not really a choice to, or get it off their books and have, preserve the structure, the carriage house, and get it alive again. And so that's the direction the county is heading in. That's the direction the Friends of Warner Circle is heading in, or is supporting. And I want to see that alive again. So that's where I'm at.
Well, also, you consider when they were trying to get people to give, not bids, but to come up with ideas for the use of the building, it would either be private or it would be like a school or a private organization. So you still wouldn't have use of that area. So whatever went in there, there would still be some restrictions on the house. So if it were to turn into a county office building for the Historic Preservation Commission, you may still not have access to the house. So I'm not sure that anything that goes in there could automatically just mean you can't just go into the house.
I guess, Tracy, what I'm saying though is if the same folks that ran the math and said, hey, let's spend $6 million for this thing and then use it as a HPC office and then realize, oops, we need another 6 to turn it into an office. I don't think they're probably in the best place to be analyzing financial feasibility models to say what this thing should be activated with or with not. I mean, they've already made a complete bogey by a factor of 2, what it really costs to do something with it. So all I'm saying is I'd love to see, I think they should show you what the proposal is. It just seems to me, and you know what? I would endorse the reactivation with the townhomes. I have no problem with that. I think it's a great idea. I just have a massive problem with not making whole the taxpayer on the initial $6 million. That's my only issue I have with it. Nothing, I think it's a great idea, but I think that, the same folks at the county analyzing were the same people that said, they missed it by a double factor of what it would cost to move into it. So I sort of am nervous with them analyzing the next bit. That's
Okay.
all.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments? Oh, Jack, you're on mute, just so you know.
Thank you. I'd like to remind you a little more of the history. The brother and sister that owned the nursing home sold it to a developer who was going to build 18 townhouses around the perimeter. He said, I will save the mansion. And if you look at the map in the town hall, that piece of land is already subdivided into lots. There wouldn't have been anything that we could have done to prevent the developer from building those houses. So it was sort of a desperate save to pay the $6 million to buy it back from the developer to prevent them from building townhouses on the land, save the land. I guess the other point is, by the way, we don't have access to the mansion or the carriage house now. We have access to the park, but not to the land. Finally, I think it is a very good use for the property. It's the best that anybody has ever come up with. They couldn't lease it for $1 a year to anyone. There were no takers. So it's the only possibility we got. I think it's a good one, and I recommend we go ahead and do it and write our letter and approve doing it. There's no point in worrying about the $6 million that's been spent. That was spent 15 years ago.
I agree, Jack. Yeah, that is. Okay. Thank you, Jack. Does anybody else who hasn't spoken want to? Not seeing any hands. Okay. Jason, thank you for coming tonight and speaking, and then we'll get to the resolution a little later in the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Nate, you're up, number 3.
Okay. So just a couple of updates from the working group that we have on pedestrian and bicycling access and safety. Good news to report. We had submitted a grant request to the Transportation's Land Use Connection grant program by MCOG, and we were notified 2 weeks ago that we received it. We were selected. I think there were 11 proposals by member governments selected out of 27 or something like that. So we got the grant on the first try. So it's a $55,000 grant to study how to improve the Connecticut Avenue corridor and some of the secondary roads that are some of the main, like the main secondary roads like Knowles and Metropolitan, but basically how to transform that and vision it to be more geared towards pedestrian, bicycling, safety and access, including mobility options, other types of micro-mobility options. So the process for that, and I should say that was the Montgomery County Department of Transportation that partnered with us on that grant. And they're going to be, the way the process works from here is the consultants basically apply to COG to be eligible, being accepted for one of the contractors to do these types of studies. So there'll be a short listing of contractors, I believe, over the summer, and then they'll ask a member of the town council and or maybe another member of our working group to be on the final selection committee to review the proposals for what we're going to do with that grant. So it's great. It's great news. I think it's going to be really helpful for coming up with some innovative solutions around Connecticut Avenue, and we'll keep you posted on that. Related to that, we actually had also recommended in our report that the working group did. So this was the first recommendation. The second recommendation was to submit an application to the state highway administration for bicycling and pedestrian priority designation, area designation. We have that designation based on the county's perspective, but we also wanted to apply to get it from the state. And basically what this would do is make, it'll allow kind of that area, if it's designated, it's essentially a half-mile radius that's centered on the Howard and Connecticut Avenue intersection, basically encompassing all of Kensington and some of the surrounding communities. And it would allow for, pedestrians and cyclists to have greater prioritization when the state's making decisions. It's meant to facilitate more collaboration between the state and the county and the town. So I think this will be really, if we can get it, we'll find out. Matt was super helpful along with the working group in putting that application together. We submitted it on Friday. We should find out in the next couple of weeks or months whether we've been designated. It's a bit of a long shot. I think they only designate several, one or two, maybe three each year. But it really goes well with the grant that I just mentioned, because the findings from the grant, from the study that the grant will finance, will probably come about sometime around this time next year, by June 2022. And they can feed really well into this, what's called a BIPA, the priority area designation process. So we'll keep everyone posted on that, but I just wanted to report that we got that in. And in so doing, I think it's really important just to say there are a lot of people involved with this. So first, Tracy, thank you. You were very helpful with getting the support and the letters of support from a lot of our county council members. We have Andrew Friedson, Evan Glass, and Gabe Abernaz all supporting, writing letters of support for the TLC grant. We also had for the BIPA designation last week, we were able to secure, again, thanks to Tracy and Matt for their support, and the town staff for getting Director Conklin from MC Department of Transportation, Montgomery County Department of Transportation, to submit a letter. And also we had Casey Anderson from Parks and Planning submit a letter on our behalf. So we had their full support. We also had the staff support within MC Department of Transportation, really helping along the way. So those are two updates. One question that's come out of our working group that I wanted to pose to you all and the council in particular first, and then great to hear the residents' feedback on this, is we've had some non-town of Kensington folks interested in being a part of our working group, and wanted to see if that's something that would be feasible from all of your perspectives. I mean, it's not official committee, right? So, but there are some people with some particularly good expertise that we could, I think, benefit from, who've expressed some interest in being a part of the working group, who are in neighboring communities and not necessarily located in the town of Kensington. And I'm sorry, there was one more issue that was requested by the working group in our last meeting, is that we have a lighting consultant, Scott Watson, who we've discussed many times, the work that he's doing on our behalf for the rate case with TEPCO. But there are a lot of recommendations that are coming out of the working group related to pedestrian scale street lighting. And the working group just wanted to pose the question to the council if it's possible to work with either this lighting consultant, since we have him under contract or maybe another lighting consultant to help with identifying. We have identified through our walkability audit process some areas in the network of lighting where that could be enhanced with street lighting improvements. And just to maybe, if it's okay, if we give a consultant or Scott those recommendations, if we are to work with him on doing some of those network improvements, can we work with him to help to validate our recommendations, or just use that as an input into that process if we're going to work with him in that context. So those are the four updates, and I guess 2 questions for me. Thanks.
Council, any questions for Nate?
I don't have a question, but I think having surrounding communities is probably helpful. Maybe like limit the number so that it doesn't become overwhelmed, but maybe carve out some space for them, because it's, I know that part of the plan is always to have continuous bike paths, right? And pedestrian paths. So that might be kind of in keeping with that goal.
So just to provide connectivity between
so that
communities?
Yeah, so we have a more comprehensive idea of how our plans are going to fit into the wider plan, like how people are, obviously we want to focus on Kensington, but just having that perspective and expertise might be incredibly valuable. So if we could carve out just like 1 or 2 seats for them as opposed to excluding them completely.
Okay. Council?
I guess a question then, because I think Bridget brings up a good and fair point. Are you going to limit it geographically? Since Nate, the BBPA map version 3 that's in our council packet, right? It shows the half-mile radius called the impact area. So that means Kensington Estates, Kengar, and North Kensington are kind of like the 3 primary abutting areas. I don't know if that's where the residents that have interest are from. I think those 3 make a lot of sense to what Bridget's points are. They show the connective tissue of different bike paths and other things from those jurisdictions, but I don't know, without knowing where the requests were coming from, I don't know if it's all the way down, Parkwood or Chevy Chase View or, but just to keep the focus, anything you can do to keep the focus on this half-mile radius, since that's what they're going to, that's going to be the impact area they look at.
Maybe contiguous sections.
Yeah, I think you raise an interesting point, because actually when I posed the question, it wasn't specific to the BIPA designation process. It was actually just people who are really interested about these issues. They're local relatively, they might have some family ties to Kensington, but they think what you're doing is really cool with the working group. Can I be a part of it? And I've had to say, no, you're not a town resident, unfortunately, even though you grew up here or whatever. I think that the question, so there's kind of 2 questions. I think that there will be, I know there will be proactive outreach to include those surrounding communities in neighborhoods in the BIPA, in the TLC grant process. And then definitely in the BIPA designation. But I'm talking about the broader working group and whatever we do with respect to those activities. Again, some of it is directed at the TLC grant and the BIPA process, but we're doing other things too, like continuing the walkability audits, where other things will come up along the way. So I was just actually posing the question with respect to the broader working group, but maybe that speaks to another issue, is what does this working group become? And Darren and I have already started talking about, does it make sense to merge this with the traffic committee in a future year? Or I kind of like the flexibility of the working group and the possibility of including other surrounding residents who are not necessarily in the town. But yeah, I just wanted to pose it, and maybe we don't have to have specific resolution, but it's good to hear these ideas.
Was it more based on their expertise and less on their location?
Yeah. For example, there was a gentleman from Montgomery County Department of Transportation who, has particular expertise in these areas and wanted to participate. I maybe heard from 1 or 2 people from other communities or from the surrounding areas who just expressed interest. I don't know their expertise, to be honest. So we'd have to come up with some way of what makes sense to bring people in or not. And, I think it could be based on the level of expertise that they bring and to fill a gap, or we could, do it other ways with making sure that each surrounding community is represented. So yeah, I'm not sure. I just wanted to put it out there.
Okay. I mean, as you said, you're not an official committee by charter, not one that is required. Yet, having an affiliate type of member, someone who is there to assist in consulting, I don't really have an issue with it. I think as long as, town money is not being spent in Parkwood, which is, I'm just saying that could get a little sticky, but in general, I don't really have
Okay.
a problem with it. As long as, the focus is mainly on the town and that the resources that you're looking at are mainly on the town.
Right.
So, yeah. You had another question about Scott.
Yeah. I'm in the street lighting, pedestrian scale street lighting network, and whether that could be something he could look at too.
Well, isn't he already doing that to a certain extent? Reviewing our
No, not yet. We haven't.
streetlights?
He's reviewing streetlights, but he's not reviewing the pedestrian streetlights. He's looking at the ones that are Pepco, and I think most of the pedestrian ones are ours.
So the pole lights on like Howard Avenue or Armory.
Yeah.
Gaps in that network, but also I think that even on the utility pole lights, he hasn't done maybe I'm not correct in this, but I don't think he's done a network analysis on that fully, has he?
No,
He
you're
is.
correct. No.
He's going to though, wasn't he? Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, he's done a preliminary report. Most of his time thus far has been put towards the rate case. The preliminary report was mostly Connecticut Avenue and a few of the surrounding streets, but he hasn't done a full review of the entire town.
But he's planning on doing that? Was that part of the contract?
It's allowed within the contract. The council would have to approve through phases. He proposed a 5-phase program for us. The initial phase was the preliminary report, and then to help us with the Pepco rate case. So that was the resolution we passed, I want to say in either March or April with the phases.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing I'm not comfortable with is and this would include the DRB or anything else where you're giving a consultant hired by the town to look at an overview or whatever, and then a committee starts directing them in other areas, and then we get a big bill. So that's the area I'm not comfortable with. So we just have to figure out a way of how it can fit within his consulting contract. Because then you can get a lot of other people directing him in different directions. And so I do have concerns about that. So if we can figure out a way of how to make it work, maybe one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And Nate, what would be the timing? I'm just looking back at Scott Watson's proposal. Sounds like what you're talking about is the detailed site inspection, where he produced a very specific street lighting layout based on the approved luminaries. And I think that's part of what we're waiting on in the rate case, correct? Is to determine which lights, what color, and everything, the luminaries that we would like to press for within the town. So what is the order of operation that needs to occur here?
Yeah, so I guess, we've already done our work. There are a lot of recommendations in everyone who did the audit process, we audited every street, and I don't know the exact numbers, but there were a lot of people identifying, gaps in, our main lighting network, and then other areas where we could improve. Again, this is a working group. It wasn't done scientifically, but it was done systematically, where we could upgrade to, areas in the town that might benefit from pedestrian scale lighting. So there are those two issues that we have kind of a database, or I guess we have recommendations that we could just give him when it's time. And I guess my question is okay to give him that data? I guess we'll just wait for you for that. We can wait to have that discussion on when it's exactly the right time to do it when he gets to that point. It may be a couple months
I think
from now.
some of
maybe
these are
next
going to be
year.
separate issues too from the rate case. So, it might be easier just, Scott's not really handling the pedestrian level street lighting. He's handling the major, bigger lights. So they're kind of like two separate issues. One, I think, is within the scope of the rate case and one isn't. So maybe it's easier to just do it after the rate case so it's clear. I don't know. This is just me spitballing.
To not confuse or
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it correct that Chevy Chase View has dropped out of the case? Is that correct?
I haven't heard that, but I talked to Jana Co. like last week. She didn't indicate to me she was dropping out. In fact, she was gunning for a settlement, but not dropping out.
Well, they wanted their, what is it, the hydrogen bulbs or something, the old bulbs?
I think they didn't want to get, so they had not HPS, but the vapor lights maybe, and they were still trucking along. So I think their problem was that they didn't want to have to pay for new lights when the lights that they had were still viable. And then also if they had replacement lights, they didn't want to have to pay for
the new
replacement lights. Yeah, because things were still working. And if they owned the lights and they did it on their own, then they didn't have to keep replacing it or paying Pepco for it. So I think there were a couple issues in there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry, Nate, is that done? Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that has a question for Nate? Not seeing anybody. Okay. So we will move on. Connor, you have an update on Thrive?
I do. Once again, so I'm just going to follow up for those who are on the community listserv, the Google listserv. I posted quite a lengthy summary about 12 days ago. It tells me it gives a little background about Thrive. Anybody who's new to it, very succinctly, there is a general plan for all development across the county. That general plan was originally adopted in 1964 with a subsequent upgrade in 1998, I believe, but really it has not been updated since that time. And all sector plans and master plans, like our sector plan, are tied to the policy issues that are derived from that general plan. And the county planning is revising and updating the general plan. And the new title is called Thrive Montgomery 2050, the vision for development for the next 30 years across the county. So Thrive is largely a policy document. It goes into what are the priorities that the county is trying to set over the next 30 years around housing, around infrastructure, around how we live, move, operate in the neighborhoods that we're in. A little bit of timeline. The original plan was set out in October. What they call the working draft plan was released on October 1st of 2020 and subsequently approved on November 19th of 2020, where it became the public hearing draft plan. And that public process was open until December of 2020. We're now looking at the planning board draft plan. Not to confuse people, but this is the one that the planning board has officially adopted recommendations, some edits and changes and updates. In fact, the updates are fairly significant, right down to the layout and structure of the plan itself, which is 172 pages. But I want to bring it up tonight because I want people to know where the plan is and what's happening next. So the plan right now is moving to the county council, and it is going to go onto the county council's calendar for the public hearing on June 17th at 7 p.m. And that was one of the things that, people have asked, if I'm really concerned about what's going on with Thrive and how it might impact Kensington, what should I do? What can I do? And the first thing you can do is you could consider testifying at the public hearing. Now, the live testimony slots are already filled. The town has requested one on behalf of myself, Mayor Tracy. We've asked for one. We're on a wait list. We are working to get off of the wait list because we are representing the entire town. But you can still submit testimony. You can submit testimony by email. You can submit testimony by filling out the form on the county's website. I'll put that in the chat in a moment. You can submit video testimony or written testimony. The county provides great details on the link I'll post here in a moment about how to do that. Why we've been following Thrive so closely, and to give people background, we engaged with this back in about January, just a month after it became public, and have pretty much talked about it at every council meeting since. Mayor Tracy and I have met with the county executive, numerous members of the county council. We've met with the planning board chair, the planning staff chair, and we are part of a coalition of about 23 different municipalities and civic associations, which represent tens of thousands of residents, to voice our concern over two things. One is the process. The Thrive working group coming and the documents coming in the midst of the pandemic has just, in our opinion, not had the sheer amount of public process that we had hoped it would, especially considering the drafts are substantially different from each of the versions that I mentioned, especially right down to this third one. But the other thing is the proposals of some of the recommendations of how it would impact the residential area and our commercial zoned areas are significant. There are some really wonderful ideas. There are things about missing middle housing. That's a term that it's one of the terms of du jour within Thrive Montgomery. And the idea is that the county really needs a more diverse set of housing. We have single family homes on one end. We have large multi-unit rentals and condos at the other end. And what they want is more flexible middle housing, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, townhouses. They want to do that because you can fit more housing units on square footage, especially around transit, areas where the cost of land is extremely expensive. And these are worthy concepts. And the problem is, in our discussions about Thrive from the early onset, where county said, hey, we'd love to put townhouses and duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes into the residentially zoned area, but it will all be compatible heights, setbacks, lot coverage. You wouldn't know a single family home from a multifamily home unless you saw, two front doors open at the same time. And that's very workable. I grew up in a neighborhood that had many of these, and you really don't notice the difference. But a lot of that has been stripped out of the most recent version, this desire to get to a greater level of densification and more housing. And it's the secondary and tertiary impacts of this, right? There's huge environmental consequences that are not discussed in the Thrive Montgomery document. There are huge infrastructure questions that are not fully discussed in the Thrive document. They don't explain where stormwater management is going to be done and how it's going to be done, especially in some of the down county areas that have really old age stormwater management systems. They don't talk about how roadways and parking is necessarily going to work, schools, libraries, other public amenities, other than to say it needs to be all within 15 minutes of living. So I know I've mentioned this, we've talked about it in numerous meetings, so I will come down off of the soapbox, except for to say, if you are also concerned about this, I will post a link to the document, the current document that is going to be taken up by the county council on June 17th. And I urge you to write a letter. And if you have questions about it, or you'd like to know, some of the areas that we're most concerned about as a council, I'm happy to point them out. But this is a time where collectively, I hope people will raise up their voices to let the county council know it's not that we're against any of the proposals that are in this. This is moving too fast. This does not need to be approved by October, right? Let's take our time, because the other thing that has happened is how we lived has shifted in the last year. And we don't know if this is a permanent shift, if it's a long-term temporary or partial shift, or if how people live, work, and school in their neighborhoods will be changed, forever. I stand ready for questions.
Council, do you have any questions? Not seeing any.
I will quickly say the flip side of this whole discussion is, yes, we are trying to influence the Thrive document. But I think with the target of July, we're also looking at what we can do within our own current authority to sort of have a backstop against, if the county doesn't listen, if they decide to do something about, if they lump Mark in with Metro, for example, what are our options? So that's just a quick aside.
Okay. Somebody asked a question in the chat. Does this represent the full council's opinion? I'm not sure whether it's just Thrive in general or it's the missing middle portion of it. And I just to be clear, it's not missing middle is not, for the most part, affordable housing. It is obtainable housing. So I think the best example is if the two houses that were built on Frederick Avenue, you could have easily had 3 or 4 on that same property. So that would be the missing middle. And those houses may have been not 1.5 million, but maybe they've been 850,000 each. So that's obtainable housing. So just to be clear on that. So especially in around transit and down county, land is expensive. So it is not, so it's not affordable. And a lot of people think that that's what they're building is affordable housing, but not when the land is so expensive. So.
The only other thing I'd bring up to the question of does it represent the full council's opinion, we've not taken a resolution on this. However, in bringing it before the council as updates numerous times this year, as part of the coalition that we're in with these 23 other municipalities and civic associations, what we have asked for from the council was a vote of support for different letters that were written that we wanted the mayor to sign on behalf of the town. Those letters dealt with the overall Thrive process, that it's moving extremely fast. It is not providing the type of public input that we think is necessary. We talked to concern about specific zoning text amendments, ZTAs, that were being introduced at the time that Thrive is under consideration, and asking that they prioritize Thrive over the zoning text amendment. The zoning text amendment 20-07 from County Council Member Will Juando. The aim there, to Mayor Tracy's point, was about relaxing some of the building requirements specifically around Metro within a half-mile and a 1-mile radius. To Darren's point, Thrive talks about focal points maybe being around transit, not just Metro. That can be the BRT, the bus rapid transit. It can also be MARC, which if MARC folds into this discussion, then the town of Kensington is squarely within the footprint of what they're talking about. And the third one was just overall some numerous letters from the initial draft that we had. I mean, it was substantial. Because there's 23 municipalities and we have some overlapping concerns, but we also have individual concerns. It was a lengthy letter. It was 13, 14 pages. So to the question of did it represent the council's opinion, what has been done is just we took votes of support in signing those letters. Those are also on the neighborhood listserv. I attached those I attached the letters for people to look at.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody in the audience have any additional questions? Not seeing any hands. Okay, great. Thank you. Connor, you have one more regarding a quick update on compost crew.
Yes, I'm going to do the first part. Nate will do the second part. Compost crew is residential at-home composting. You can sign up. You pay individually as a household. You either get a bucket or a roller tub. and you compost your food scraps. A number of families in the town, including my own, have been doing it for a long time. The pilot was started up a couple of years ago, and we're trying to make a push, a marketing push along with Compost Crew to increase the number of households that are composting, and that's for two reasons. One, composting takes all of those food scraps out of the garbage supply chain. It removes them from landfills. It puts them back into the earth where they can be turned into compost, which is then returned to the customers each spring as bags that you can put into your garden. When the pilot started, it was about 20 households. It got up to the low 40s when Mayor Tracy and Nate and I engaged Compost Crew to say, how can we raise the awareness of this even more? We came up with an idea, and then the pandemic put it back in the box for almost a year. But for Earth Day, we resurrected the idea. We brought Compost Crew out to the farmers market. They had a tent set up. They did a wonderful job of providing education and information. They were there and available to take signups. I was really happy to hear, in just that one morning, there were 2 signups, although one was actually from outside of the town, so we don't get credit. But there were also additional signups that came from the posting, the information that Nate and I put together for the March Around Town Journal, and then we put that into the listserv as well. So right now, the town is at 47 households. And why it matters is Compost Crew, the way they run their program is, as a collective whole, within the town of Kensington, as we get additional households in, it will lower the price for every single household that's participating. And the next breakpoint is at 50 households. So if we get 3 more households to sign up, the individual cost per household goes from $24 a month down to $20 a month. And if we get from 50 households to 75, it will drop again from $20 per household to $16 per household. The same level of service, the same level of pickups. It's Friday, just like garbage. I just roll my tote outside. They pick it up. They leave a new liner. I roll it back inside. So this is just another push. Nate and I would, if you have any questions, I know both of us are doing it. I think a lot of the residents, we can point you to numerous other residents that are composting, especially with Compost Crew. But the idea is that we're just trying to get more people composting. And our hope is that we can pick up additional households by mentioning it again here today. And then Nate, I'll let you take the rest.
Okay, thanks, Connor. Did you want to, well, I guess I could just do it. So two requests that we'd like to put forward based on our previous conversations with the Compost Crew is to have a more regular participation of them with a little booth like they did on Earth Day on a regular basis once a month. Maybe, Connor and I were throwing out maybe the second Saturday of each month because we know that the beer vendors there the first Saturday of the month to increase the visibility, like Connor said, get more people composting, sign people up. And then the second thing that we wanted to go get approval to move forward on was with the identification of a kind of a centralized location at the MARC station for households that are smaller households that may not have enough food scraps to really merit them having their own bin, but have a more of a community collective site for these households and have that be the centralized location of the MARC station. This would also serve to allow our food vendors who may be otherwise throwing away some of their waste, the coffee grinds and so on, to give them an opportunity to put that in the bin right there after the farmer's market. It sounds like Compost Crew is willing to work with us on it. We just need to identify a spot, how to secure the bin, and then when the pickup would be, because we don't want it just sitting there for a week outside attracting rodents and such. So they said they would be willing to do it, come out a separate day. It doesn't have to be Fridays, which is, like Connor said, the day that they come around our town. We'd want them to come on a Sunday or a Monday. And I think they'd be willing to do that. So we're seeking kind of agreement to move forward with those and to work with them to come on a more regular basis at the farmer's market, and then to get the centralized bin location set up. One thing, Connor, when you were, I actually just thought of this as you were, doing the breakdown of 47 households, though, is that if we do this centralized location, can we get them to kind of count that equivalent of maybe 5 households to push us over over that 50 number?
I
You might
think it's
wanna
all in
negotiate a
the
little bit with
art,
them.
all in the art of the mayor's negotiation skills.
Yeah, we'll have to negotiate a little bit on that.
So I think on the one at the train station, we've talked about that before. It probably would need to be on our side of the property, not on Mark property. So that would make it definitely easier because if you're looking at the train station, the stuff to the right, especially behind the train station, is Mark's. Then to the left, we have a section, let's say where Rabbit Hill is, where Vera's is, that's the town side. So we could look at putting something there. Probably something with a concrete pad, so rodents can't come underneath and chew up. And then possibly something with lumber that kind of holds the trash can in that area. So I can ask Jason to think of something. We need a size though on what.
We can get that.
A large can or?
Through their municipal program, they have larger ones because the idea behind that is that they oftentimes are located at like a town hall, which as you remember, we talked about town hall, but to get the benefit also of taking the food scraps from the vendors at the farmers market, we thought that locating it there was a little more centrally located. And I will say it was reinforced for me. Nate and I were out at the farmers market a week and a half ago when they were there. And, talking with Kirsten, who is the on-site from Compost Crew, and residents that came by. And there was a gentleman who came by who's he's a single resident household. And his point was, I would love to do this, but I just don't generate enough to pay $24 a month for. But if there was a place I could just bag it up and drop it off, I would. And so it kind of reinforced that there's definitely a quote unquote market for that type of drop-off service. And to your point, yeah, I mean, call it a bear box, similar to how they do things around Deep Creek Lake to provide, prevent wildlife from getting into it, something like that to enclose it.
Okay.
I've just been putting my stuff in Connor's bin.
Oh, I've noticed. You need to change your diet, Darren.
It's compost fraud. Come on.
My only other concern, and I'm sure we can overcome it, but I know we have problems with public recycling because people will put things in the recycling bins that are not recyclable. And when the guy comes to clear it, once it's been contaminated, it all becomes trash, which I know is a frustration for many who like recycling. But especially, I've noticed this big time at the train station. There are things in the recycling can that should not be there. And so ultimately that will all just go into trash because nobody's going to sit there and sort it and sort it out. So I think we need really clear signage on what can go into this can and what it's for. I think that's an educational component is always helpful.
And also
Agreed.
indicating that those buckets are not trash themselves. I know my neighbor, someone stole her bucket.
Really? Oh, they wanted the bucket? Oh,
they thought the bucket was,
curb alerts.
He came back later and apologized.
Wow.
It's pretty awesome.
So, so I just think a good signage is really helpful, and even when it's when it's picked up or something. But I mean, we have the extra totes in the parks for trash because the other trash cans aren't able to handle, the amount of garbage. So we put in totes, and over the weekend, somebody had put all their yard waste into one of the totes. So, so I had, and then trash on top of the yard waste, which means ecology's not going to take it. So the crew ended up having to detrash and take the half a tote of yard waste. So it's
not even lazy. It's just like they took effort to be that big a jerk.
But public trash and recycling is sometimes a bit of a challenge for.
Yeah.
But we can overcome it. I have no problem with So we just need good signage and the educational component is always helpful. Why
Well, I
we're
think
doing
Nate and I would be happy to go back and work with Dan from Compost Crew and his team, because they do this in numerous other municipalities. And so I'm sure they have some best practices and examples and bring it back to you all in June.
Well, and I think if we were to get, probably their larger size bucket and get that delivered, then I could just give it to the crew and say, okay, secure it.
Yep.
And they'll, so,
Yep. Okay.
okay.
We will
All right, sounds
follow up.
great. Are there any other questions from the audience regarding Compost Crew? And I have seen more buckets. I really do. I see a lot more. So, okay, I'm not seeing any hands. One thing I do want to bring up, I am on the county's now bi-weekly call regarding COVID and what they're doing. And we get questions all the time about events. And when can we start holding events? It has been suggested that the governor will allow the state of emergency to expire by the end of this month. Which would mean for the state, unless the county wants to do it, go back to normal or following just CDC guidelines. So I did talk to Mark Hudson regarding the 4th of July bike parade, because some of the municipalities do have Memorial Day parades, and the county, basically, if you can keep people social distancing and wearing a mask if it's over a certain number, which is, really hard to enforce, but then they, said, go ahead and have your, you can go ahead and have the parade for that. So we have time before the 4th of July parade, but Mark is willing to do it. And we still need to make a decision regarding Labor Day. So that's coming up. We have put on the calendar the Paint the Town, as well as the train show. And what's the other one, Matt? There's one more. I know, the Nighthawks in November, because one of the things they said you could do, of course, we'll figure out what restrictions are as you get closer, but if it's a controlled area like the town hall where you can control the entrances, you can't control like a Labor Day parade and the number of people. If they say you can have 100 people inside, that's what you can set. You're restricted to 100 people at a time. So it's easier to do. So the county fully supports doing that for events, if you can monitor how many people, and that's easy to do on an inside event, just by counting, or limiting the number of tickets. So they're on the calendar. They can easily be canceled if we get down to, these are all September events, September and November. If something happens, they can be canceled. But the biggest thing we do need to make a decision on is the upcoming outdoor events.
Do you have a, are we looking to make a decision tonight, or do we have a, like,
No,
the
I
Labor
don't
Day
think we need to.
parade?
We can wait till probably June. It's not going to take a lot to put
For
together
July
a
4th. Yeah.
July 4th event.
What about for
I mean-
Labor Day, for staff purposes? What's the latest a decision can be made?
So the State Highway Administration is allowing us to apply for the road closure permits for Connecticut Avenue.
And that's what takes the longest, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So we have applied for the permits. We have not been given approval yet. But once we have those, we'd be able to reach out to the vendors to see if we could have a small scale Labor Day event. So probably the June council meeting will have a pretty good idea.
And I think the biggest problem for the parade is the fact that, most of the groups that participate in the parade have not met in over a year. Are they organized enough to come together for a parade? Have the bands had enough practice together to come for a parade? So I think that is, I'm not sure how many people you're going to attract for a parade.
Well, and are there individual organizations going to allow for that type of event, right? The schools may have to wait for guidance from MCPS.
Right. Although I'm not sure the schools participate, well, they would for the bands.
Mhm.
Right. Well, it's something to think about for the next meeting. But it would be very helpful to have a decision made for the outdoor events. So, but as I said, anything in the town hall can be controlled by the number of just people that you allow in. And I think with the Paint the Town and the train show, we could set up a page on the website that people can sign up on. And especially for the train show, because that's a paid event to support the Kensington Historical Society that people can pay online to get their tickets ahead of time. And then you can just do it by time slots. That's what I think. Okay. Any other questions from the council or the audience?
Tracy, I have something just new topic. If we're on to a new topic.
Oh,
there's one question in the chat.
Oh, what was the? Sorry.
Kids can't even get the vaccine yet if they're under 12.
Right. I don't know the answer to that question. I can ask at my next meeting, but that's never come up with Dr. Gales regarding indoor events. It's just more the masking and the social distancing aspect. But I will ask about the vaccinations. Okay, Bridget?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Matt Hoffman, who gave some rock star testimony in the rate case. And I talk about having the ideal witness who only answers the questions asked. That was amazing. So much so that Pepco desperately reached out and asked for a meeting because his testimony was so devastating. So hooray for Matt Hoffman, star witness.
So did the meeting go well with Pepco? Do you have anything to update on that?
I think it was them trying to show that they're, team players trying to work with us. But really it was just information collecting on their part and me probably acknowledging that to their face. So
okay, so now we're going to give you everything you want.
No, I think that actually they understand now that they need to communicate a lot better, and that they're not going to get what they want unless they do that.
Okay.
So it was productive. I just don't think any of us got out of it what we originally thought we were going to get out of it. But it was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Council, you have any questions?
While we're on that topic, I just had a quick question. So Bridget and I met with it was Tammy from Pepco and also Barbara, their engineer, regarding the EV charging, the electric vehicle charging stations. And we actually have, it sounds like at least the point when we discussed with them, they were super willing to try to make it work somewhere at one of our proposed sites. But we were going to have a follow-up kind of walkthrough session with them of the two sites, the Mark Station and Town Hall, the Armory, which was maybe going to be this Wednesday. But I'm going to ask you, Bridget, we wanted to wait till after that meeting last week. Are we going to have that with them on Wednesday?
I mean, I think we're still on for the 12th. So,
Okay, because I didn't see anything. I didn't see them. I'll follow up with them and just find out when we're going to do it.
I thought they rejected Town Hall. Did they?
They didn't flat out reject it. We talked to them about it, just kind of showed them where we think it could work.
We gently nudged them back towards Town Hall.
Yeah. We had a good session where we were looking at Google Maps and had a little guy come down or a girl and then walk around and showed them where we thought this could work and tried to think through a little more creatively with them. But I think it's important Matt's there so he can show us. So especially at the Mark Station where we can show them where our property ends and where the Mark property begins.
Okay, so but it has to be government-owned property, is that correct?
Town of Kensington owned, yeah.
Okay, and
There
Yeah,
has to
because
be
you-
certain like configurations, like we have to have access to the electricity, right? So you have to have access to a pole.
Sure.
There can't be a lot of obstacles in between the pole and where you would have the charging station. And then ideally
Right.
there'd be 2 charging stations. So
No,
and you
Four,
want
right?
cars to be able
so
to
two
rotate
per
out?
charging station, right?
I know, but you don't want a
Yeah.
car in a commuter lot to be sitting there all day taking up that space, correct?
Um,
Time limited spot?
we didn't get that far. We were just trying to logistically find a place where it could work.
For
So
the
I guess-
infrastructure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the real hard part is going to be finding a place that doesn't have like a barrier in between where the line has to go to the charging station. So like no walls and stuff. It's going to be hard to find one of those spots where it's like convenient and makes sense for people. So we haven't really even gotten to that.
Okay,
And
All right.
we can always restrict the parking space to 30 minutes or an hour or whatever the full charge would require. So
yeah, I can't imagine you'd want it to be all day parking. That wouldn't make any sense. So,
It is the idea that if granted a site, it would be one site, right? There's no chance of both sites. And so,
It's too hard to find one.
yeah, I'm glad to hear and voice support for nudging them back to town hall if the layout of town hall, the electrical panel source and everything is feasible, because the other benefit besides our town hall parking is public parking and people could park there and charge during the day is in the future, if the town would like to shift, our parking enforcement vehicle and other things into EV electric vehicles, we would have a mechanism to charge them, right? We could, whether we put in our own or we use that one, we would have the infrastructure right here at town hall where overnight we could be keeping our vehicles charged up.
Yeah, I think it depends on how strong each station is, like how long it takes to charge a vehicle and then the type of vehicle. So, all of the first sort of like primary question we got to do is like, can we find a place or can we make a place convenient for it?
Have they said whether it's a type 2 or type 3 charging station?
It's not a superstar charger station. I did ask,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
they said that our location did not really justify it. Yeah.
Agreed.
So
but-
it could be up. It could realistically be a 3 or 4 hour charge. So
yeah.
we'll have to think
Yeah.
about signage later. I think that'll come later.
okay, thank you. Does anybody else have anything else before we move on? No? Okay. Matt, from the town manager and staff?
Sure. Last year, April 2020, the town council passed amendments to our commercial sign regulations. We began enforcing specifically the limited duration sign requirements over the past month. As you can imagine, we're receiving some feedback from the commercial business owners now. So I'm not going to get into too much detail, but essentially I'm asking for direction on possibly bringing in a number of the commercial property owners to a council meeting in either June or July. They would like some discussion about the signage, maybe some increasing the size limit from 10 square feet, and provide some other feedback that the council might take into consideration for a possible amendment.
Okay, what is the status on the 10619 sign?
They have provided me a rendering of a metal sign. My understanding is that aluminum is a little hard to come by right now. They're waiting for the sign contractor to get it back in stock. But my hope is shortly that they'll have a permanent sign up in place.
Okay.
But they did provide a sketch. I mean, it looked fine. I mean, it was pretty similar to what they have now. It would just meet the permanent sign requirements. And I do need to confirm that it's not 26 feet above grade, which they have not done yet. So,
Okay.
which may require a variance. In the council packets and the public packet, there's a letter from Montgomery County Department of Transportation regarding a proposal to install a sidewalk on the south side of Pliers Mill Road. in return for the town removing the westbound stop sign at the intersection of Pliers Mill and Summit Avenue. This has been something the town has been discussing with MCDOT for the better part of a year. This is the arrangement that council more or less is okay with. We were looking for pedestrian improvements at that intersection before we would consider removing the stop sign. So that is the letter confirming it, along with the proposal to install the new sidewalk and crosswalks.
Yeah, it's the crosswalks, not all of them, but 2 of them, and the sidewalk is in Kengar, which is not in our jurisdiction, but this is something that we have negotiated with the county to provide Kengar community with, because they have no sidewalks to get up to that intersection, complete sidewalks. And when we did the mural on the Summit Avenue Bridge, quite a few pedestrians really wanted crosswalks, painted crosswalks. They felt safer. So the county is providing the one on the north side. And then because Howard Avenue we own, we can add that crosswalk on the east side when we do crosswalks again to get them to the shopping center.
Okay, I got ahead of myself a little bit. Does the council have a preference for the June or July council meeting to discuss limited duration signs?
June?
I mean, I don't care, but I think out of just the fact that there are 3 people up for election and it would be a new council as of July 1st, I would say July.
I have no preference.
Yeah, I don't have a preference, but I think it's good to bring them in. Yeah.
I'll reach out to them and see if they have a preference, and then I'll communicate with the council. So 2 more updates. St. Paul Park walking path. We are anticipating them to mill and pave it by the end of the month. They may not be completed, but they hope to start by the end of May. So the park, the walking path, they're going to mill it down, extend it out to 5 feet in width, and repave it. So I'm hoping that it will take about a week or 2 at the most. The interior of the park will still be available, the playground equipment, but the walking path will just be will not be usable for a week or 2. And then one last update. Our current opening for assistant to the town manager, the application deadline passed on April 30th. We received 22 applications. We were very pleased with the applicant pool. Ann Lichter, who is the chair of our Racial Justice Committee, along with Councilmember Crimmins and I, have been reviewing the applications. We are doing screenings, interviews this week, and we hope to have Zoom interviews maybe next week. And my hope is to have someone on board before July 1st, but we'll see. So.
Hey, Matt, going back to St. Paul Park, because I envision numerous questions. So get that everything outside and inside is available. Do you know, at first we had talked about maybe they were going to do it in segments, sections, or just how they're going to rope that area off, just thinking about how people are going to access the park and or the practice fields. And then just out of anybody who's got a permit pulled, right, soccer tots, whatever they are, to make sure that we communicate with them what's going on.
Sure. So they'll probably do the width extension first. They'll probably dig out to get to the 5 feet. Then they'll probably come back and mill and pave. Again, my hope is a week, depending on weather, but we'll communicate with any permit holders, whether it's soccer or pavilion. And again, hopefully by the end of the month. That was the word this morning. So.
But they're not anticipating any sort of construction fencing or anything. It'll just be, so you can just walk over the milled out portion when, okay, good.
Yeah. And once the new walking path is put in place, as soon as they roll it, I mean, if you're walking on it, you're not going to want to go right after it, but it will be usable the next day usually. So.
As it cools off.
Yeah.
No bare feet.
I will tell my children.
Can't tell your children anything, Connor. Matt, did you need the council just to give a heads up, thumbs up for the Pliers Mill removal of the stop sign?
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, just kind of, I mean, we would be removing our stop sign. There was some concern from the Kengar community when we raised this to them originally. And the council stated that if MCDOT was willing to do some pedestrian improvements to the intersection, we would consider removing the stop sign and
anyone wanting to make a left from westbound Summit onto southbound, Pliers Mill to Summit, they would still have to yield to anyone going out of Kengar coming out.
Correct. So westbound traffic along Pliers Mill would still have to yield to anyone coming out of the Kengar community, which is kind of what MCDOT's argument was, why the stop sign could be removed. But I don't know if Councilmember Bartram or Councilmember Hilzay want to comment on this any further, because it did come through the traffic committee. So
I'll just quickly say that the county wants to get along with us on this. They don't really want to upset people. And they did, because we're talking about taking signs out and putting them back, they did hold out the possibility that if it doesn't work, that something could be redone or undone. But,
yeah, I think I just wanted the assurance that, they would do their part first, so that, our residents are sort of left in the balance.
Well, I believe he was talking about having the concrete, the pedestrian updates this month. So it says spring 2021. So.
Yeah, he said spring 2021 and we're in May.
Yeah, it's almost summer.
Yeah, we're supposed to get rapid fire beacons too 2 years ago. So,
Yeah, I just think as long as we protect our folks, and we're not overly trusting, I'm fine with it.
All right, good. All right, anyone in the audience?
And the only other thing I imagine that this will come with a full slate of, leaflet drops, communication, especially to the Kengar community, to make sure they're aware, signage or flags to notice drivers of the change in signage. I mean, honestly, it's a heavily rolled stop sign as it is, but I just don't want people to get.
Do?
Well, the county said that
MCDOT.
they have a process for putting up orange signs.
Yep.
Because they are they're removing a stop sign that we are used to seeing or used to having observed. So, whatever they would normally do when they do that, they need to do here.
Yes, exactly. That's all I care about. Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll move down to public appearances. This is the opportunity for anyone in the public to bring up something that's not on the agenda. And Jack, I see you waving. Jack, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. As your astronomer, I have two announcements. On Wednesday, February 26th, there will be a full supermoon and a total lunar eclipse. Unfortunately, the lunar eclipse is going to begin just as the moon is starting to set. And on Thursday, June 10th, there will be a partial solar eclipse. It'll be a 55% blockage of the sun, the maximum coverage. And again, an inconvenient time. It will occur at 5:47 a.m., which is only a few minutes after our local sunrise, which is 5:44 a.m.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but 55% is a lot.
35%?
55, more than
55,
half.
yes, I agree with you. 55 is a lot, but you still can't, you're not supposed to look at the sun, so you have to do that thing through a box. Is that right? The shadow? Yeah.
Or there are special glasses or
Right.
Trump can look at it by himself.
Get those ISO glasses out that we had for the last one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
You're
Does
welcome.
anybody else have something they want to bring up? Seeing no hands, seeing no chat. Okay, we're good to move on to ordinance, resolutions, and regulations. Matt.
Sure. Mayor and Council, ordinance number O-02-2021, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the town of Kensington adopting the fiscal year 2021-2022 FY22 budget is before you. We held the public hearing on Monday, April 12th, 2021. We kept the public record open through 4 p.m. this past Friday on May 7th. The council in your council packets received 4 public comments, 3 of which are from the town staff. 1 is from the Racial Justice Committee for $1,500. And then there are 3 requests from the council that from the town staff for amendments from the initial introduction in March. That is $10,000 to the development, to professional services to hire a consulting service for the Development Review Board. Staff is requesting an additional $3,500 to professional services to increase the building inspector's annual salary from $4,000 a year to $7,500 a year. The building inspector has not received an increase in at least 15 years. And the third request from the staff is an additional $33,340 to Public Works Personnel Services. My hope is to reclassify the seasonal Public Works position to a full-time position. The additional funds would allow us to provide benefits if the position's reclassified from seasonal to full-time. And again, the $1,500 request from the Racial Justice Committee.
Okay, just for clarity too, I know I sent something out to the council regarding the K-Town ladies, and they were already in the budget from last year.
Correct. So we actually already had them in the budget for
Right.
what they were requesting, so we did not make an
So
addition.
it's not an addition, it was already in the budget.
Correct. I should note, you'll notice on the revised budget, the unappropriated surplus changed, which is why we decided to move ahead with the staff requests as well. The town received a HUD grant about 25 years ago to make improvements at the town hall, specifically related to the elevator. It took 25 years, but we finally got the $350,000 grant money. It was wired to us 2 weeks ago. That is why the unappropriated surplus went from about $710,000 to just over $1 million. We have revised our CIP plan to account for the additional funding. It's in the council and public packets, which is, we were not expecting that money. We were hoping for it, but we were not anticipating it this soon or maybe even ever. But
Well, I want to thank Susan particularly for really hanging in there and calling and being just always on top of it and just checking in. And I think she went through 3 administrations and finally got her money. So thank you, Susan, for doing that. And
Yeah, I'm glad we got the money. So
yeah. So she's lost a relationship with HUD, her best friend. But we're fortunately they did finally pay up. So it's great. So those funds will be mostly allocated towards the use of the building. So which needs some work, especially the portico. So. Okay.
We move to motion.
we are requesting a motion to approve the FY22 budget as amended.
I'll move to approve O-02-2021, the budget as amended.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next
Perfect.
one.
Thank you, council. We will send the tax rates to the state. They are due by Friday. And thank you. Resolution number R-09-2020 is a resolution of the mayor and council of the town of Kensington authorizing the extension of a contract with Nazario Construction Corporation for the concrete and asphalt paving services. This is an extension of an existing contract piggybacking off of a 2019 award to the city of Tacoma Park. The owner of Nazario Construction has agreed to provide us 2019 Tacoma Park pricing for 2 years through June 2023. There is an Exhibit A that the council should have received that shows the individual unit pricing that goes along with the resolution.
Council, do you have any questions? Okay. Is there a motion?
I move that we adopt resolution number R-09-2021, resolution of the mayor and council authorizing the extension of a contract with Nazario Construction Corporation for concrete and asphalt paving services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, Matt, number 3.
Resolution number R-10-2021 is a resolution of the mayor and council of the town of Kensington in support of the proposed sale of Warner Mansion and Carriage House located at 10231 Carroll Place to Washington Landmark Construction for the rehabilitation of the historic building as residential condominiums and to preserve the surrounding land around the historic buildings as public parkland.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions? We've talked about this earlier, obviously in the day. Okay. Is there a motion?
I move that we adopt resolution R-10-2021, resolution of the mayor and council in support of the proposed sale of Warner Mansion and Carriage House to Washington Landmark Construction.
Yeah, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we'll give it
You
to
can
Rich.
have it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Number 4.
Okay, resolution number R-11-2021 is a resolution of the mayor and council of the town of Kensington authorizing the donation of a surplus vehicle, a 2000 Ford F-150, to the Montgomery County Students Automotive Trades Foundation. This is our old pickup. It's a 2000 Ford F-150 that we have not used for a number of years. Well, we have used it.
That is not accurate.
Not as an operable vehicle. It's been sitting in the back of town hall for quite a while. And we are requesting to donate it to essentially the Edison High School of Technology in Wheaton. Their students will use it as a learning tool. They'll break the engine apart and do some body work on it and probably resell it at some point. But we'd like to donate it to the Montgomery County Public School System.
We'll probably sell it for scrap, but did the squirrels and the raccoons that are living in it go with it, or?
Considering, so this was used for some of the construction detour traffic abatement on the north side when Metropolitan was closed. This thing doesn't run. I mean, it doesn't start. It needs to be jumped to move. We don't need it. And I think this is an extremely worthy program to donate it to. So I'm really glad to see that you guys found a really good solution for something that really needs to go.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Well, sure, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number R-11-2021.
Okay, is there a second? Nate, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've reached the end of the meeting tonight. It's 9:11, not too bad. And you all have we need a motion to adjourn.
Bridget, lead us out of here.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. You guys have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.